move some things around, so I was pretty tight there. So nobody else had the same level of concern for Galvin?
Well, he doesn't have the council for cheering the meeting. As the vice chair, I was really worried.
Start, did you already start recording?
Nope, not yet. I did start.
All right. Ready to rock?
All right.
All right, call this meeting to order. The Ad hoc Facilities Committee, June 24th, 2024, 11:03 a.m. We'll do a quick roll call. Mayor Genrich. Here. Alder Johnson here. Alder Galvin. Here. Jesse Sharp.
Here.
Garrett Bader.
Here.
Chet Lamers.
Here.
Ian Griffiths.
Yep.
Paul Matsky.
Here.
Not bad. Well done, folks.
So we're missing the R in the name.
Oh, boy.
I got an extra H, so.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Agenda for the June 24th, 2024 meeting of the Ad hoc Facilities Committee.
I'll fix
Entertain a
that.
Motion.
So moved.
Is that a motion by Matsky and second by Genrich? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Okay, regular business, one, consideration possible action to award the FGM Architects the space needs analysis and feasibility study. Staff.
All right. I believe Trista is online. And Trista, did you want to help speak to this? I also thought Director, wow, drawing a blank here. Jim Burnett was going to be in here, but I don't see him at the moment. Oh, there he is. I'm sorry. All right, let's turn it over to Jim.
Well, I actually was hoping that Trista would speak on it.
Trista, can you hear us?
I did help with.
I can.
Thank you. Trista is online, Jim.
So did you want me to give a little recap?
Yes, please.
Okay, sorry, I'm traveling, so it's signal's not the greatest, so if I cut out, I apologize. So we did send out an RFP for the space needs analysis and feasibility study. We sent it out to 9 firms, and I believe we received 5 back. A lot of good responses that we received. Wide variety of prices, wide variety of level of detail. So Jim Burnett, myself, and Ben Allen from the police department convened. We each reviewed the proposals based on the criteria in the RFP, and then we convened, discussed them. There was one that stood out to all 3 of us, kind of middle of the pack cost wise, but stood out that their attention to detail, the experience that they have in like-sized municipalities, just stood out to all of us, and that's why we're making the recommendation for FGM.
Do we need a funding source?
Yep, the one that we would recommend at this point would be ARPA interest. That would be have enough room or capacity for this. Looks like it's for $93,000 with some options, which would be a total of $109,000 if we went with both options. Is that correct, Trista?
That's correct.
So would you, Diana, would you see this as being a recommendation to finance that would then go to council?
Yes, it would have to come back through finance, correct?
So I think at the end of the day, this is getting what we were hoping for, right? Which is sort of that analysis of, I mean, what it would take to take space needs analysis and some of those other things, right? The flow. And really give us a recommendation. And ultimately, are they going to come up with like a cost estimate too? Because I think what I'm hoping for is that we can get to a point where we can start incorporating pieces or all of this into our 5-year CIP. And I say pieces if you have a phased option. Trista, correct?
Trista did say
yes.
yes.
Oh, she did. Okay, thank you, Trista.
Yep. So part of what we saw in their proposal as well was they really did a good job of addressing that phased schedule in working that into the CIP. They also came on site and asked some really insightful questions on what kind of the city's budgetary process is. So I think we felt really confident that they'd be able to help us work that into future CIPs as well.
Together.
I didn't see anything in the proposal and when you look at the problems we're running into with the fire department buildings, when you look at the problems we're running into with the police department buildings, when those buildings were erected, it was like nobody looked 20 years down the road, much less 50 years down the road. And, you know, I know these projects are going to cost us a considerable amount of money. And I'm just wondering, are we looking towards 50, 75 years? You know, how long do we want these buildings to last? And what do we want them to be able to do? I mean, we had 30-some thousand people onto the far east side of the city, which last estimate, that's what I heard we have room for. That's going to require a change in fire services, a change in police services, plus where are we going as a culture where this could be affected too? I mean, when I started at the PD, there was one female officer. Now we have so many, we've had to make adjustments all along to be able to take care of those individuals. So do they do something like that? You know, try to anticipate where, you know, these buildings how they may be used in the far future?
Yeah, so what you have in your packet for the proposal is really just the cover letter portion of it. Their proposal did go into, there's going to be a long process that, relatively long, but to get together with each of the stakeholders, so the directors, whomever that each department feels is going to be important in the decision making and foreseeing where the future of each department is and trying to plan for that.
I apologize, you're right. The RFP that we received back from them was much longer. If you want, I could try to pull it up and put it on the screen. Okay.
It's okay, I'll trust you.
The RFP did, their response that they submitted did say that they're gonna provide the city with a 10 to 20-year master plan.
That's it, okay.
But I think to your point, it comes also down to flexibility, right?
You have to be able to pivot. Yeah.
Right, how flexible, what's the, you know, structure of the building, how's it gonna be adaptable in the future?
Right.
I think certainly as a city, we can review that and kind of look at the plans and objectives and see if there are spaces that can be more flexible in nature.
Right. I mean, you know, we have a fire department building that can no longer accept the current vehicles that are designed for it.
Right.
And talking to people I know on the fire department, we've got rigs that are rusting out. So we have things like underbody flushers that, you know, if you think it to the future, or EV, if we're gonna pivot to that at some point. I mean, so, you know, I mean, the PD used to have municipal court in it.
Yep.
And it didn't have a second floor, so no one anticipated evidence storage for the life of the suspect or the convicted guy, you know, where we're having to store all this stuff that we never anticipated. So I just, you know, we can't anticipate, you can't think of everything. But if, like you said, we can design it to be flexible in the future, and so we get the most use out of these buildings for the longest amount of time, I think that's, we have to, you know, be pursuing that.
It's always a balance between how high do you make the building to accept apparatus that may be 14 feet now, but might be 20 feet 3 years or 10 years from now.
Right.
Right. What is the value of that extra 4 feet?
Right. Oh,
Now, or, yeah.
Well, the old generator was designed to supply power to City Hall. That was never used. Thankfully, we didn't need it, but now it's obsolete and it just takes up space. And I think City Hall has their own backup plans right now that the, you know, PD doesn't have to answer. So, I mean, someone was anticipating, but then turned out we didn't end up needing it.
Cost of purchasing an option.
Right. Yeah.
Seems to me this is probably the step that we really need in. So I, unless there's further discussion, I would entertain a motion that we refer this to Finance Committee for up to 110,000. What's it, Dave?
I'll second that.
Oh, how about you make the motion?
I'll make that motion.
And is there a second? Okay, motion by Galvin, a second by Mansky. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 2, consideration possible action regarding an update on fire stations 1 and 3. Chief, I assume that's you?
Sure. Good morning. For having us again. So one of the things, we have been working very diligently with community development and the developer that was chosen for that site selection. We're working closely to determine the best site plan and layout at this point. And our next scheduled meeting is this week, actually, June 27th. So we hope to hit the next renditions of what those site plans look like. Again, our goal is commercial development, commercial and residential along Broadway, fire station tucked out of the north side, and then figure out the best site for that. We're struggling with some stormwater issues and floodplain areas and things like that. So they're looking at a multi-phased approach to this property and continue to work through that. But probably after the end of this week, I should have some better updates that we can maybe forward out to you.
I assume they're working towards a schematic design right now.
Yes, and actually right now, just basic programming space. So like our site need analysis that we've done previously for our fire administration offices and for a fire station, I'm just creating those boxes on that site. And so no conductive graphics at this point, no real, architectural details. It should.
Right. And do we know when that's going to happen? When they'll have something that could be shared?
I don't yet, but like I said, hopefully this week we have some better answers on where those boxes go, which then makes it easier to put the facades on.
Okay, and maybe a little bit outside the scope of this group, maybe not, but it's my understanding we have an EPA grant that's going to require demolition and remediation of the site later this year. Is that still on track?
Timeframe for the demolition is to be determined.
Yep.
I would say at least, but we're looking for something sooner than later, but again, our facility needs, we do have some storage in that building and so we're pleased with their evidence. So there's a need to find alternative sites. Police have an alternative site and we do not at this point. And look to find those solutions and then move our stuff out and then proceed with demolition. So.
Okay. Alder Galvin?
You talked about floodplain issues. Will the project we have at Seymour Park, will that mitigate that to some degree or at all?
Potentially. The floodplain is, that was built along an old slough.
Yeah.
And as I think we talked about one of the other committees too, but there are some things we can do. One of the things is there's gonna be bioswales and some specific stormwater retention on site in the southern end of that property where it's predominantly where that floodplain area is. And then the work in Seymour Park is projected to provide some relief for that also. So that's gonna be work done by their civil engineering staff and really determine what that best solution is.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, our current facility, our current station 1, we're still out of that building. So we are without a headquarters at this point in time and have that for a couple of months. We've been
Would you update the group on that? Because I don't know if everybody knows that.
Sure. So our current building, fire station 1 is had some extensive remediation done due to flooding, due to a sewer backup. So a urinal valve stuck, flooded the second floor and then all the way down to the first floor in the one section. So we had a contractor come in right away, did remediation of flooring removal, which also includes some asbestos tiles, walls brought up to, in most spots, knee to waist high, which then exposed some lead paint issues. And so now we're at a point where, we're considering either, rebuilding that building or figuring out if we move it on to its next purpose. When we look at insurance costs, they're gonna pay to put it back to the way it was. We've had some architects and engineers walk through that building. We also understand that there's some significant plumbing issues, which includes perhaps rebuilding and replacing some cast iron pipe that's in there that has also been known to be rusting. And then we have some rotted boards that were caused by previous water leaks that were exposed and identified as the purpose of this. And then also questionable electric service in most areas too. So I guess that's where we're at.
Chief, do you see the administration returning to that building?
I really don't.
So, and the reason I ask, of course, is, and part of what I was hoping for out of this committee was to ultimately, once we figured out, right, stations 1 and 3.
Yep.
Figuring out what to do with that asset. And so, I'm wondering if an insurance claim to restore that back to its current condition is the wisest use of a claim?
I would say no. We've been working with the insurance company because again, in order for us to do that, we'd have to do some major renovations on our end, on the city's end. So we'd be putting money into that for problems we've identified because of this remediation work. We've approached them and looking to discuss a settlement and then maybe, because again, we also know next phase of this building will not be these same walls and that same structure as outlined.
So the insurance carrier is willing to
They're
consider a settlement.
willing to start those discussions.
Right,
You know?
right. That's what I was getting.
Yeah, like Alder Galvin said, we have significant issues there with restroom facilities. We have 0 ADA requirements. We have a women's restroom with a urinal that we put a sign up that says that now it's a women's restroom. You know, so that's just, building has some significant challenges on a good day. That's obviously caused many, many more.
So I'm wondering if you've got an interim solution now, right? Oh, well, you don't. Where are you working?
Out of my truck. I worked upstairs at HR.
Okay.
So, yeah. Yeah, so this is a problem that we see, we kind of move forward a little bit, we take steps back. We've never, because again, we've had no, and it's nobody's fault, we just had, because of the insurance coverage, we've had no plan, right? So we can't enter into an agreement, we can't enter into any, so we've been working out of fire stations, any spot we can find. All of our staff is now decentralized, moved out.
Put a pin in that line for a minute, but if you're taking partial insurance proceeds and you're clearing out the asbestos and one base paint for anybody in the future to
Yep.
renovate that.
Yep.
You're at second base starting on future
Yep.
renovation of that property. That's
Like-
what I mean.
Yeah, and that's kind of, if you don't feel like that you're going to return to that property, what I'm getting at is there merit in us starting to prepare it to market the property
That's
rather than sitting on it until the new station's done?
to be in doing that work, is there a full look at the building of here's all the asbestos in it, and all the lead based paint and all
Not as
the.
part of that, those insurance.
You tack that on for a little bit extra and you get a full scope of what's there and yank all that out and give somebody, here you go, a building that has none of that in it.
Yeah.
You could really renovate that thing.
Yeah. So we're working with insurance now because again, they remove partial lead paint of one wall, but we assume that lead paint exists
Everywhere.
behind everywhere. So asbestos tile, again, now asbestos tiles, but between laminate and carpet over the top of most of those areas. Most of it's removed, probably, but I'm sure there's still some just in there in the corners.
Asbestos, the lead paint, I'm guessing.
Yeah, lead paint's behind late years of latex paint also. So again, that's a 100-year-old building. So,
I'm familiar with those, they're
Yeah.
fun.
yeah,
So to me, it becomes really an administrative function, right, between you and the mayor to kind of figure out what your
yeah, we've been working on a couple.
what your solution is. So I don't think we need to concern ourselves with that, but I do wonder if there's some merit in maybe having this committee make a recommendation to have Department of Community and Economic Development start to prepare an RFP for the property. Just curious what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any harm in it. I don't know that we're necessarily ready, to put out an RFP within the next few months or something. But that's definitely what we've been thinking about, even preceding some of these issues that happen as a result of the backup over there. And that's always been the plan, is to market these properties, Fire Station 1 and ultimately 3, for redevelopment purposes. And, we have been working on some more short-term solutions for fire administration. Unfortunately, it's not the easiest thing in the world to come up with the appropriate space, especially when the insurance company isn't giving us a little bit more certainty as far as how many months of rent that they would actually cover. But I mean, some kind of direction, related to an RFP on Fire Station 1, I don't think there's any problem with that.
Yeah, it's kind of my thought is maybe refer it to staff and then come back here with the RFP draft once it's
Mhm.
ready. Recognizing, I don't think we need to force it, right? I'm not saying we've got to do it in 30 days, but just
I think your first step is clarify what is yet to be remediated. Figure that part out,
get that settled.
get that settled so that you can actually put in the RFP, here's what's there, here's what's we're cleaning out. You'll essentially have a clean slate.
So I think referring to staff would give us, leaving it vague would give the flexibility for staff to start working on the RFP, but
Prepare for the
time
ultimate
the delivery. when it's
disposition
ready.
of property or
Yeah,
something like that.
Right.
disposition or redevelopment.
disposition and redevelopment? Or just redevelopment?
I think if your objective is to want to save that building, which I think it should, maybe it needs to be repurposed a little bit differently to disposition.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question.
Well,
Well, just dispossessing from the city's
right.
Yeah,
ownership, but yeah.
Okay. You have a question, Bill? No. No. Okay, so floor's open for a motion. Unless there's any other questions, Richie.
I guess, I don't want to interrupt that discussion of the motions, but the project that you're doing for 1 and 3, you're working with the AE firms to do your programming primarily on the fire station. You gentlemen are certainly the client there. Who's representing the city, or how is the process working for the balance of that project on that site?
Sure.
So who's fielding those comments and driving that design, and at the end of the day, is the city, I guess, responsible for the multifamily portion of the project, or is that the developer entirely?
Sure, and Bear, if you want to field that one too, or I can start.
Yeah.
Okay, so we went out for an RFP looking for developers specifically. One developer has chosen based on some of their innovations that we've seen in other communities. And also their experience in some mixed use occupancies like this. So we've been working with them closely to identify our space needs. Their market rate research is identifying the number of units that would be most suited. And then also the concepts of some phasing that would occur there too. So that part is primarily for the city being led by community development. And then the partnership that we see with the three of us, the developer, community development, fire is to, make sure that, the architects, so we have architects that are specifically related to the fire side, architects related to the developer side, and then all working collaboratively to figure out the best solution for that site.
And are we tied to all of the above, or what happens if they hit a snag with the process in the multifamily portion of the project,
Correct.
that it doesn't derail a new fire station?
Correct. Yeah.
We don't know that yet.
Yep. Well, there's some of the fun variables. So yes, I think, like I said, I think there's some definite solutions. And, again, their market research has identified a specific need. So it's just a matter of size and scope of the commercial development and then citing of what is best suited for that site, what amenities where, basically. So I think the project has great momentum, and we'd love to see that continue.
And I would say, I think we need to have some certainty with respect to the
Yeah.
fire aspect of things by spring of 25. And I think we'll have a good sense of whether or not that's gonna be able to move forward, along with the housing in roughly in that timeframe.
It is the same architect that you're working with for both the housing and,
No.
or are they two independent?
It's two independent, yeah, so there's, one of the things with the RFP we've seen, and you're probably well versed in this too, is understanding that fire, much like fire and law enforcement facilities are kind of unique.
Uh-huh.
And so we did in the RFP request somebody that was specific to fire side.
Yeah.
And so they've been that architect and the developer, or the architect that the developer normally works with, also partnered with a fire centric
Okay,
architect.
okay. I wasn't fair on that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any questions? Again, entertaining motion going back to the original discussion.
So the open motion to be to refer to community economic development. That would you,
Refer to staff.
for staff, okay, motion to refer to staff.
Be a little bit, let's be a little bit more specific, if you don't mind. I would entertain refer staff to start preparing an RFP for eventual disposition.
We tie in the engineering work on that, the environmental.
And following the insurance stuff, you mean?
Well, and whether it happens concurrently or as part of that insurance discussion or not, but I think my motion would then be to engage the environmental review to fully assess what's in the building, and you can concurrently send it to economic development too then.
Would does Stantec do we have funding in place with that agreement that they could do that?
That's a good question for that site. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'll let staff kind of figure that out. Otherwise, I presume the environmental assessment would have to just come back for a funding source.
But that would come through community economic development anyway, right? That part. So if the motion is just simply refer this to community economic development.
Staff.
The staff to explore the environmental remediation final studies of it and prepare an RFP for future. Study.
That covers it.
Good.
Okay, that's the motion by Bader. For a second? Okay, second by Galvin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. And just kind of, again, just to reiterate, I think the desire of the committee is to have that draft RFP come back to this committee when it's ready. Just for some additional eyes. Okay. Item 3, consideration of possible action on the referral from the June 18th, 2024 meeting of the Finance Committee to review City Hall security needs and bring back the requests for the next capital improvement plan. So this was actually a motion I made at the Finance Committee meeting. As many of you may have seen in the media, there's been some discussion around security needs for City Hall. Part of that was armed security, and that did pass through Common Council. But then the other piece of it was really taking a look at the building itself and how do we make the building safer and more secure. Obviously the recognizing armed security is part of it. I wanted to continue to have on a committee agenda somewhere the need for us to continue work around, securing City Hall, because that to me was part of the overall renovation needs of this facility that would ultimately be put back into the CIP. So that's why we had to come back to this committee. From there, the document that was contained in here, I think, is a really abbreviated version of some thoughts, Cliff's notes, if you will, around maybe some thoughts that are probably being entertained by staff, I imagine, at this point. For some things that we could do. But welcome to discussion, or Mayor, if you wanted to provide a little bit of oversight on those Cliff's notes and kind of what you see as maybe next steps.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alder Johnson did a nice job of recapping things. The other thing just to note for the committee is our emphasis on moving as many non-public facing services off of, or functions off of first floor. So we moved purchasing and payroll from first floor to the fourth floor, planning for future moves for the remainder of the finance department and the assessor's office, opening some of those rooms up for community access for meetings of this sort and just other public functions, so that we can sort of limit the flow through the building when we have public meetings. So that's one piece of like the facility side of the security conversation. The other one would be, and this was kind of alluded to at the finance committee discussion. Another thing that I think we could contemplate on the first floor is creating a little bit more of controlled access on the north side of the building. I think we're already planning, once we have security services in place, to sort of shut down the southern door that's close to Walnut. Maintain those two northern doors, but a physical improvement that we could contemplate is kind of, creating a little bit of vestibule area, so that along with a security guard, you would have more controlled access potentially. On the customer service side of things, we're planning to have administrative staff working with that security guard, so it can be more of a one-stop shop to take care of a lot of the low-hanging fruit that people are coming to City Hall for, or even directing them to the county, because I think that's one out of every 3 conversations. Register of Deeds is not here.
And into someone in the park right over here with the northern.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of that can be taken care of, at closer to the front door. So so those are all pieces of the conversation.
Do you think it makes sense maybe for the consultant we just recommended to perhaps take this piece on as well? Because the biggest thing I think that I would like to see out of it is just an improved, customer service experience. And I know you share that sentiment.
Yeah.
And just, how we design it, I guess, to create that. And obviously staffing it is going to be another discussion, but not something we necessarily have to have here.
Yeah, I don't know if Trista's still on the line, or if she feels like, that is something that we could discuss in the context of the space needs analysis.
I do think that would be something that they would be looking at anyway. Part of it is looking at what we want on what floors and what the adjacencies would be. So if security is a part of that discussion, I think that does make sense.
Okay.
What firm of security is it?
What do we have in terms of security?
Yep.
Alder Johnson, Alder Galvin, you know, myself.
Yeah.
No, I mean, they're really, you know, we have obviously more of a direct line to PD than
Sure.
a private business would.
Yeah.
And so we have, you know, panic buttons and things like that.
Yep.
And, you know, security protocol that staff should be familiar with. And so that's kind of how we handle things. But we don't have any on-site security. That is something that we did have basically a security audit that Department of Homeland Security conducted for us, and that was one of the more obvious observations. You know, you don't have a full-time security presence here, and that's probably something, you know, given the attention and traffic that a public building like this receives, something we should have.
Can you electronically control those right now? Yes.
Mhm.
Do we have a system that potentially can be expanded upon also?
Right.
Okay.
Yep, that is true. And I should also note that the police department, you know, has access to cameras here at City
Yep.
Hall.
Yep.
And so from a surveillance point of view, you know, they can flip those on or, you know, observe them more directly. But, you know, staff are busy enough at PD where there's not, you know, persistent eyes on City Hall, obviously.
It's when you're sitting at desk at the PD, you're not looking at the camera
No.
unless someone directs you to look.
Right, for sure.
And it's, you know, it's not like
Same
TV.
with schools.
You're right, same thing. And the schools are hardened targets now.
Yep.
So entry into the schools is extremely difficult.
Yep.
Whereas here, even if you hit the lock button on the doors, there's nothing but glass all the way around, which is not what you have at schools anymore.
Correct.
And literally you can just walk through the door because it's glass. So I look at an armed security guard as more as an ounce of prevention. If people know it's there, it's like, or if a guy, you know, mostly I think what we're gonna see is a lone wolf type thing. Short-term emotionally disturbed person, something like that, that comes in because they're venting about taxes or
Sure.
an inspection issue. And so I think that having that armed security guard there is gonna be worth its weight in gold in that a lot of people either walk in and see what's there and walk
Yep.
back out. Or if they know what's there in advance, it's just not worth the effort.
Yeah, right.
And as we're looking at sort of those city hall improvements, right? Right now, the way things stand, if you want to talk to the mayor, you gotta go to the second floor. If you're
Yep.
paying a parking ticket, you have to go to the third floor. If you want your permit to reserve a park shelter, you gotta go to the fourth floor, fifth floor.
Fifth.
Right? But you get the
Sure.
point, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so just trying to figure out how we streamline that. And
Yep.
so, you know, I think it's probably pretty unusual for a building like this to have open rain, right?
Yeah.
Can most of that occur perhaps on the first floor?
Yeah, just like if you have security, ability to lock down the front doors, you don't like for room 310. Right, I mean, there's nothing, right? Once you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
You're in the whole building, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so people could technically come into a city council meeting and then hide in the stairwell.
Yeah, right.
All the way up to the top, sit in the
Yep.
dark, wait.
Yep.
I mean, it's just, there's too many variables that can occur here that we can't control.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not challenging that.
Oh,
I'm
that's
trying to
right.
get a better
Mhm.
handle on where your points of access are right now and where they really should be.
Mhm. Okay, so maybe the right motion here would be just to refer this to staff to incorporate recommendations into the study.
I'll make that one.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Griffiths, a second by Galvin. Any further discussion?
I just would ask the question, so you referred to the study that we made the motion to move forward earlier. The city does have AE services on call too, do they not?
AE?
What kind of?
Architect services
Oh, I don't know.
For Public Works, yeah.
through Public Works? So I guess my question is simply, depending on how fast that study moves and where that goes, in terms of not slowing this stuff down, would that be another alternative? To use the on-call
Well, the
to
hope was-
evaluate this and work with Public Works?
No, I think it's a great question, and I think our hope was, you know, that we could make some recommendations for our CIP that would come out with the budget in, when does it get released, May or October?
Yeah, September, October.
Yeah, I mean, So the question would be, I don't, how quickly is our consultant working? Do you know that?
The timeline for space needs analysis?
Yeah.
I'm not recalling.
Kristen, you know the timelines of the space needs analysis?
They did include a schedule with their proposal. I don't have that with me, but I don't believe that we'll have anything. Being that it's been a month or two now, since I submitted that, I don't think we'll have anything ready for this CIP. But without talking to them, I don't know that for sure.
And, you know, we can. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're taking a look at all the improvements holistically that we need for City Hall and coming together with a really good plan. I'd be a little hesitant to rush it, knowing that we do have the security coming in, right? That kind of gives us sort of our immediate need. Maybe there's some, and I think the staff is already doing the short-term things, right, that are easy. The mayor kind of alluded to a few of those modifications that they've made.
But I didn't understand that too. Like, I
Yeah.
thought this was a rush. So if it's not,
Gotcha,
if we have the
gotcha.
time, then yeah, then
Right.
the consultant for the study is probably a very logical choice.
Sure. Yeah, I think we probably do have that amount of time.
Yeah, I would put security staff in sort of the rush category, whereas some of these physical improvements, I think we've got a little bit of time for them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure for clarification, the finance committee did approve the security contract. So the contract is going to be
Mhm.
beginning.
Yeah, council will need to ultimately approve that tomorrow, but
Did we not approve that yet?
no, not yet.
Thought we did.
We just met with finance last.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me rescind what I said before, which was council approved it. Sorry, I
Mhm.
messed that up. Thanks for the clarification.
I'll take it.
Yeah. So, okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Did you have a first and a second?
Okay, item for consideration with possible action on the discussion of an executive summary for the common council and future needs of this committee. So this was, we had this put on here, Diana and I had a conversation about kind of like, what is the future of this committee? And of course, it is ad hoc. And I think the intent was always to evaluate some of these very large and substantial CIP needs. And just provide a little bit of oversight and expertise to help with that. I think what we have to figure out now, is kind of what role does this committee continue to play? Part of it's looking, at sort of the physical improvement needs. I think part of my hope out of this committee originally when we proposed it was to also look at the financing component. And I think we're doing that a little bit by incorporating some of this stuff into future CIPs. We had put on here the executive summary because to me, like just to have this committee get together, order up a few reports, doesn't necessarily do it justice, right? An executive summary to say, hey, these are the recommendations we made and here's why, just so that council feels comfortable about the direction. But even today, we've also made a couple of motions asking certain things to come back yet. So admittedly, Diana, when we spoke, I didn't know yet that this report was this contract was coming up. So personally, I think I can still see the value of holding on to this committee for a little bit longer yet while we get those things back. And then once we have that information and that data, perhaps we could bundle it into an executive summary, which might even be captured in those reports. So that way council feels like they're getting a solid recommendation from this group about the right course of action. Because at first, when we kind of came together, right, we knew City Hall needed $10 million, police station was talking about needs, fire stations 1 and 3 were talking about needs, and the hope was that this group could really evaluate how we balance all of those fiscal responsibilities while at the same time recognizing that those are some big improvements and we can't just build everything new. And so what was the best option to get us the best result? So any other thoughts from the committee? Feel like we have a handle on our scope of responsibility?
Yeah, I think I brought it up in the past. I think one of the things that I've observed is, the the need for new and improved facilities, but also what is a maintenance plan for your existing facilities? So that we don't get to a point where we're in dire need and we need to take action. So I know it's not a glamorous way to spend money, but it is a responsible way to spend money. And so I think somewhere in this or some result of this committee should yield a.
So your point is that a capital improvement plan also needs to consider the maintenance that goes along with your decisions.
Right.
Because it's not, they're not separate.
Exactly.
Yes. It's,
Well, and I think staff, definitely not doing things perfectly, but staff has put forward suggestions in our CIP repeatedly for this building and council, because they have a number of responsibilities.
Sure.
Obviously, a really important one is making sure that what we do is fiscally responsible. Council has pushed back on a number of those
No doubt.
suggestions. So there's that kind of natural tension that exists between recommendations and what's financially feasible or advisable. And so there's been that back and forth over the last few years is the way that I would characterize that.
I think the more that is brought forward as part of an entire picture.
when you pull this string.
Right.
I think you're right. You get more buy-in from the council if they understand, like I said,
Mhm.
although most of us aren't gonna be here 20 years from now, but that's what you have to be.
What are the ramifications?
Because our struggle has been,
Right.
how the hell did all these expensive things happen? Well, a lot of it happened because we pushed it off and pushed it off, and now we're painted in a corner, and now we can't do everything that needs to be done.
Right.
Because we can't afford it. And so I think you're right. Okay, this is a $10 million project. Well, wait a minute. Maintenance wise, it's gonna run you about 12 million over a 10 or 20-year period, because this is gonna break down eventually and need to be, like roofs.
Absolutely.
It's always the roofs.
Yep.
Right? So you're right.
So I guess my comment would be, I'm just gonna ask a rhetorical question. At what point does the committee no longer need to meet? So, happy to continue to serve on this. Would love to see one of the, pillars of this committee underway. Like, I'd love to see the fire station being built or the renovation happening here.
Right.
Before we say we don't need the ad hoc facility. But then inversely, I just ask the question, at what point does city have the staff to kind of take on the mission of what this originally was envisioned for and free up the time of the folks in this room? Maybe another way of looking at like what the exec summary needs to say. So here's the work we did. Here's the recommendations that have been made along the way. And when we see these 2 or 3 milestones being met, the work of the ad hoc facility probably can be passed on. The other thing I think about is, again, not knowing how decisions are fully made at the city. Does it help some of these larger dollar value decisions to be made, knowing there's been a committee working together to put the recommendation forth? It's not just one squeaky wheel at the city, a staff employee. Nothing against that.
Right.
You got a committee of 10, 11 people that have been trying to come to a conclusion. There's got to be some strength in that.
You're right. I mean, we sat there and we struggled about the roof. Okay, well, everyone's roof leaks at some point. But then when they tell you that there's an electrical component to it, that if it leaks into there would be catastrophic to how the city functions. And the cost would be astronomical compared to just repair the damn roof.
Right.
So, and then understanding that it's not just who's ever the director of parks making that recommendation, but it's learned people that understand these situations, making that recommendation. It puts a lot more weight to it.
That's what I mean, between those two comments, that's what I would kind of ping off of is the complexity of decisions, has a lot of different factors that comes with it. And if it's comes from this group, it might hold a little bit more weight, rather it's just being a one-off decision.
And even if you just sort of capture the dollar range on something like this, right? Like 10 million in City Hall, I don't know, 10 million on a fire station. If you do just the basic needs at police, you could still be looking at 10, right? All the way to the other end, which is what if you build one of those facility, like police station was brand new instead of renovated, right? I mean, you could be looking at a $30 to $100 million range. I don't know. And, you know, so it's, I think it helps to build, to your point, right? It helps to build the case, you know, for why you need to make that level of investment. Cause let's be honest, if you're a taxpayer, these things aren't sexy, right? But when that bridge is out, you know that.
Your house is burning, somebody come put it up.
Right, right. So, but I think it helps us even, you know, really articulate to the taxpayer, you know, why certain recommendations were being made.
So maybe that is the answer to my question. When we move forward a formal recommendation for a dollar request, is that the time at which this committee is ready to disband? So I'm imagining a scenario where the committee members are at the meeting to support questions on, well, did you think of this? Did you think of this? Did you think of this? Yeah, we did. We've been meeting on this for 2.5 years. This is the best option that, you know, collectively we all support.
So maybe an executive summary with adoption of those, the implementation into the CIP. Right, because once it's in the CIP, in theory, you're laying it out over 5 years, right? And you're laying out all the benchmarks, and in theory, as every year passes, that next year moves up. Sure. Of course, there's every year is modified, right? But at least now you have a plan for when these investments will be.
That makes sense to me.
I struggle with it a little bit because you're always gonna be looking 10 years, 20 years out. So it seems like there's always a need for some group of people to saying yes. That new decision that you're making about the future fits well into this plan. So I don't know, maybe it's not a temporary thing. I mean, that's what, you know, kind of goes in my mind.
One thing just to, if I could jump in, Chair. One thing just to note, because kind of an interim achievement or milestone, we do now have a facilities manager, Trista Hobbs, you know, previously as assistant city engineer. And so partially as a result of these conversations, decided to, you know, to create that position so that we have now somebody on staff, not just a series of people that are all kind of overseeing their own facilities. You know, we have one point person with a facilities manager. So just to note that, I think, you know, it could go either way as far as maybe creating a permanent facilities committee. We're definitely going to have an internal committee that Trista is going to be overseeing and working with to recommend some of these decisions. But just wanted to make that point that we've made some progress, at least as an organization, and being a bit more strategic in how we recommend some of these things.
And I appreciate that, Mayor, because that's, I mean, Jesse, to your point, it's, I mean, our finance committee looks at the CIP every year, and I think that was the exercise. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, we didn't even have that.
Yeah.
I mean, every year is when we got the capital request, and we didn't know what was coming in subsequent years. But I think what sort of prompted this group was looking at all the facility needs that were showing up in the CIP and recognizing we wouldn't have even been able to bond it for all of the things that were showing up in the CIP. But the problem was fire department was making their recommendation, police was making theirs, public works was making theirs, and or parks, you know, who oversee city hall. And there wasn't, it didn't seem like there was a lot of,
Just kind of getting over the hump
yeah,
of this really large.
right. And if you've got a facility manager now that hopefully can spread
Yep.
some of this out more
That makes sense.
strategically. So how can this group maybe get us over that hump? Yeah. So for now, I mean, it sounds like we feel that there's a little bit of value here in continuing for a little bit longer. And so again, we had a couple of things coming back. So I just wanted to have this item on here for discussion. So it doesn't require an action. We can receive and place on file. And maybe at least, you know, let's see how the next 1 or 2 meetings go and then revisit.
I think the space needs analysis that we again forwarded on this morning, that was something that came through this committee, and it would feel premature if we weren't still around to at least hear that analysis when it comes back.
Yeah.
That feels like a more appropriate time for closure after that's received and then acted on.
Yeah.
Yeah, for this to me, I just wanted to make sure that the committee kind of had some ownership over that discussion and that it wasn't just something directed to you. Like, we're done. So. Good. Okay, we'll entertain a motion to receive and place on file then.
Second.
Motion by Galvin, a second by Genrick. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. But I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Galvin, second by Mansky. You want to get one in?
No, that's right.
All those in favor?
I know.
say aye.
Cool.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Trista.
Yep, thank you. Have a good day.
Yep, you too.
Capital, you know, risk associated with things.
So, my understanding is that you guys were going to.
I mean, a lot of